Now we have Helen Scales, the brilliant Helen Scales, a great author, podcaster. We did a podcast together during lockdown, and we spent a couple of years. You were under your stairs, I think, and I was in a cupboard somewhere and under duvets as well. And we never met, but here we are. Wonderful to see you. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So lovely to be here, although I'm slightly in awe of everyone who's spoken before me, and all of you here in this beautiful space, so thank you so much. I'm also just going to have a quick look at my phone. Shall I do 20 minutes? Shall I do 15? Are we hungry? Shall we see how we get on? Okay, I'm going to set my timer anyway, just in case I get carried away. I think I'm also quite a good person to speak at this juncture between the science this morning and art this afternoon after lunch, because I'm sort of sit there with a bit of a foot in each side. I fell in love with the ocean as a child. In my childhood, I grew up in Surrey, so not by the ocean, but I spent a lot of time. My parents very kindly made sure I spent a lot of time by the sea, mostly down in Cornwall or in France. So it was always there for me. It was one of those things that was just part of life, was to desperately want to be down by the beach, rummaging through rock pools, putting on goggles, having a swim around, seeing if I could see anything in the murky water. And then that kind of moved into me becoming a marine biologist, I think in my teens. I originally wanted to go and save the rainforest. It was at that time when there was a lot of noise around the Rio Earth Summit in 1992, and I became a vegetarian, and I still am today because of the problems of farming. And then basically my vision turned from green to blue. I learned to scuba dive in a swimming pool in Surrey, in chlorinated seclusion. But then I did go for my first open water dive. It was March in Leicester, so it wasn't even in the ocean. And it was 4 degrees, which is the temperature of a gin and tonic with ice in it, in a wetsuit. And I thought, oh, what am I doing? This is horrible. And then I saw my first fish, and I genuinely had this moment of feeling like the aquarium wall had fallen away. Even though I could barely see beyond my arm, I was in this fish's world, and all I wanted to do was follow on after it and learn about its life and spend as much time as I could exploring beneath the waves as I could. So I think that was the real moment. Obviously, I decided I wanted to dive, and me and my friend went to those classes, but that was the moment when I knew the ocean was for me. So off I went. I'd been really lucky to explore some amazing places around the world, studying, researching, diving. I went off to be the marine biologist and studied marine biology, did lots of degrees. And then I had a rather surprising change of direction, which I wasn't really expecting at all. It was during my PhD, and I discovered a love and the power of stories and telling stories and writing and talking about the ocean. I had this passion that I had been feeling for a decade by then, really, and wanted to put myself there, but realized that actually what I could do would be to write and talk and tell other people about this extraordinary place and the problems that it faces. So I did what I now realize I do a lot. When people ask me, I care about the ocean, I want to do something, what can I do? And I say to them, well, one thing I say is, what is it? Find the thing that you're good at and do that. We've talked already about how we can't all save the ocean on our own. Well, perhaps we haven't, but that is one thing we should say. We can't do it on our own, but also everyone needs to be involved, whatever you are, scientists, divers, poets, architects, artists, gardeners, all of us. And I realized that what I wanted to do was write stories. So that is now what I mostly do. And I want to talk to you just a little bit now about how writing books has actually brought me as well back to something I had to sort of leave behind when I was a child. I always loved art and making things and the visual side of things in the world around me. But I went down the scientific route. I went and studied and became a scientist. But now being a writer, a non-fiction writer, I'm able to kind of bring that back into my life, which I love. So my latest book just came out this year, is What the Wild Sea Can Be. It's currently on the long list for the Baillie Gifford Prize, which is something I never thought I'd be able to say. You're lovely, thank you. The shortlist is out next week, and I'm very sure it won't be on it. And Salman Rushdie will win, which is quite fine. But basically, it is extraordinary to think that a book about the ocean, it's not the first time one has been on the list, but it's been a little while. And I think it does open it up to a different audience. And I just want to talk to you about the front cover, actually. One of the things I realized when I started writing books was that I wanted to make beautiful things that people would treasure and enjoy owning objects. That's one of the things I think that books do, is that they are these things that you want to keep and come back to. And I've been really lucky with the publishers I've worked with that they've let me be quite involved in the way the book looks. I mean, I'm in charge of the words inside, all 90,000 words inside, but they also let me have my views about what I want things to look like. And this image is by an artist from Bristol called Max Naylor, this original painting. He didn't make it for the book, but I found it on Instagram. And when I had a lunch meeting with my editor after I'd finished writing the book, and she said, "Oh, have you got any ideas for the front cover?" And I sort of went, "Oh, well, actually, yeah, I've seen this picture on Instagram. Could we have that?" And I'm really thrilled that they did. They got in touch with Max. He gave them a license to put it on the front cover. And what I love about it, it's called The Riches. He says it was inspired by his own kind of childhood experiences of being in the British seas and seeing what was down beneath the waterline. I don't know if you can quite see it in detail there. Do come and have a look at the copy afterwards if you'd like to see it up close. It's kind of the movement and the colour, the mixture of shapes. It's not blue. I wanted something that wasn't kind of stereotypically ocean, but it's got all these different colours, which for me really represents that richness of life in the ocean. I love that it's mostly seaweed based. I'm having a bit of a seaweed moment at the moment in what I'm thinking about and doing. And I love that it's cut through. You've got that above water, below water view. You've got some land. The sun is pouring down, which is obviously a key thing. And Heather's talked already beautifully about those connections between land and sea and how we need to embrace that. So I love this image, and I'm so pleased we're able to use it. There's other art in the book as well. So the hardback has got end plates, so in the front against the hardcover. And this is a map that's essentially like a graphic abstract of the book. It's drawn by Aaron John Gregory, who's an artist based in California, who I've been collaborating with for quite a while. He's done a few of my front covers of previous books. I'm also wearing his t-shirt, so if you fancy some of those, and he sells these, so go and check him out. But basically what I wanted him to do was to show, kind of give that spread of what the characters in the book, where they're found, where these species and habitats that I've decided to write about, on the subject of what the future of the ocean will be. So that's what the book is. It's a look at what we might be, how can we build a better future based on what we know about how the ocean is changing. And I love how the texture he brings into it. I love that he brings some character to these individual characters like orca and bluefin tuna, and all sorts of lovely things. So that's there, and I kind of imagine what readers would hopefully do as they're reading is to kind of just call back in on that map and have a look and orientate themselves to where I'm talking about in the particular chapters. The book also has photos, so it has a colour photo section, which is something I curated myself, which again is kind of nice that I got to do that. And basically, the last 2 books I've done, the publishers have said, "Okay, do you want some images?" And I've said yes. So there's, it's that lovely glossy section in the middle. And they've sort of sent me off to go and find images. And then I've ended up just doing the whole thing, basically, and going, "How about this? Here it is all laid out." And they go, "Oh, did you get someone else to do this?" And I said, no, it's just me. But this is one of the images. These are northern gannets, the biggest seabird in the North Atlantic, up in Shetland. I went up to Shetland, and it's the opening scene of the book. And I went to meet and dived with a fantastic local photographer called Billy Arthur. And I'm really thrilled we got his image in the book of these beautiful species. I'm not going to give anything away. I'm not really here to tell you about what the book contains, but if you're interested, do go and take a look. I went to Shetland to go and see ocean life at its most abundant and just wonderful. And I wanted to go somewhere without flying, and Shetland was where I went. But I got a bit more than I bargained for because I turned up in the middle of the bird flu crisis. So part of the book is really about trying to balance hopes and fears in the ocean. And I was really pushing for hope, and then you realise the fears just are always there too. So you've got to learn to deal with that. So that's one of the images. I've basically, in my putting together of the pictures for the book, I just looked towards underwater photographers I've known and worked with and just really admire. And it's a wonderful thing to have them together in one book. Just a few, it's not a lot, but this is Shane Gross. He's a Canadian photographer, up-and-coming, fantastic underwater photographer. And his portfolio is fantastic, and he kindly just said, take the images and we'll work something out. And so there's pictures like this lovely seagrass and mangrove composite. A lot of what I wanted to do with the images was get my readers just under the water and just in that world and imagining what it would be like to be there. This is a really hard-hitting image by a photographer called Stefan Chrisman. I originally worked with him on a National Geographic article about Antarctica, and this is from 2017. It's from a site where the sea ice broke up too soon before the emperor penguins had a chance to fledge. And this was one of the last that had clambered up onto this high piece of ice but didn't have many options left. It's a really bleak image, but Antarctica is a really key part of the story of how the oceans are changing. And I'm going to come back to Antarctica in a minute. So that's my book that's just out. And as I say, it is my favourite feeling of the adult books I've done so far. It's just a beautiful thing, and I'm really lucky to have all these different visual elements that have come together. So as I say, something that I had to leave behind as a scientist, and now I feel like I can bring back that into my work now and help to tell these stories about the ocean. Going back a bit, my first fully commissioned art book of adults, sorry, this isn't coming out right. My first adult book that's just full of art that was commissioned for the book is this one, which is an octopus's book in the Ladybird series. And if anyone remembers Ladybird books from back in the day, they relaunched them a few years ago to try and kind of do it again. These little, I don't have one with me, these little books. And they asked me to do octopuses, and Alan mailed, basically read my text. It's like just one page of text and then an image to go with it. And the idea is to try and capture that sense of those original artwork, the artwork of those books that were so favoured amongst kids around the world and for a long time. So that was quite fun. And I guess the thing with these images is that he got to do things that you couldn't take pictures of. These were just really fun, imaginative things to do with octopuses. Now, the other thing I do is write books for children. I've been doing that for 5 years now. It came as a bit of a surprise. Again, it was something I hadn't really set out to do. I started doing consulting on picture books. So a few publishers would come to me with books about the ocean, and they would say, can you just check that this is factually correct? And I would do that, and that was fine. And then I said, well, I quite fancy, could I do this? Could I write one? That looks like fun. And so eventually that happened. And this was my first one, The Great Barrier Reef. It was published in 2019. And this is really where I get to work with another whole group of fantastic artists around the world who are bringing to life the stories of the sea to young audiences. My youngest book now is aimed at, they say 2 to 4 or possibly 1 to 3-year-olds. It's got 8 pages. I don't have it with me. It has flaps. It's very nice. It's about seashells. But mostly I focus on the kind of 8, 9, 10, 11 range where you get to do a bit more about the science. And I just adore being able to collaborate with artists who can bring to life what I'm putting down on the page. So I'm just going to show you a few pictures from some of those books. This is, Liz Feng is a New York-based artist. And what I love about her work is its shapes, it's the color palettes, it's the design. The design teams have really put together such beautiful things that they just look more than just a bunch of facts on a page. I just love the way these books look. They're not necessarily like highly accurate depictions of species, but you get the sense of what this is. It's obviously a hammerhead shark. It's obviously a jellyfish. So I really love how that was put together, and it really opened my eyes to doing this kind of work of collaborating with artists and making these beautiful books for children. So the next one I did is the part of a series we launched called Scientists in the Wild. this is working with a Brazilian artist, Romulo de Polito. And again, I absolutely love the way he creates these characters on the page. I'm really pleased with this series. I love it. It was my idea. Basically, I wanted to create a dream team of scientists. So I invented a team of scientists who would go off on science adventures. And the first place I decided to send them was Galapagos. Here's the team, which I made. Which is all rather fun, very loosely based on some people I know, but that's all kind of hidden and just in jokes. And again, I love how that you working with illustrators and artists just gave me that chance to just have some fun and do this kind of semi-fictionalized version of science. I gave them a fantastic sailboat to work off. This is the Sula. So that was their base for roaming around the Galapagos and having science adventures. And then basically the rest of the book is real science. Every spread is based on a scientific study that I found and looked at and just interpreted for this story. So, so it may not have been one team of scientists who did all of this, but in my book it was, and it's quite fun. So one of the things I really wanted to do with this is to show young readers that science isn't just questions and answers. It's not just, here's the thing we found out. It's how we found it out. It's the process of doing science. It's the fun, messy, dangerous mistakes we make in between. And so that's what we do. I have them, have the characters using real science equipment, putting down hydrophones to listen to sperm whale songs, putting down sensors to detect the PCO2 and all that kind of stuff that Lisa was telling us about, what they see when they look down microscopes after catching plankton in nets. And I just think it's got such a lovely look and feel to it. I just can't see any other way that we could be so fun. Also explaining how things work. So this is basically another study. I think it was filmed for the BBC, but that's how they found out how sea lions in Galapagos hunt collaboratively to hunt for yellowfin tuna. So this is a kind of diagram of how they trap these tuna in bays and swallow them down and look amazing like this. So that was Galapagos. I'm so pleased now I can tell you about the second one because it's perfect for Lisa's talk this morning. Because the second one is about Antarctica, and they go all the way around Antarctica in their boats, which was just another excuse. I wrote, again, same illustrator, Romulo. I co-wrote it with my sister, Kate Hendry, who's a professor at the British Antarctic Survey. So another kind of amazing family milestone to tick off. Beautiful images by Romulo of these wonderful creatures down in Antarctica. Another fantastic team of scientists. One thing also I wanted to show children was that all sorts of different people from different places who do different things work on science. It's not just marine biologists like me. We've got oceanographers and atmospheric scientists and ice scientists and ornithologists and all sorts of data scientists and so on. This is their ship. Looks a bit like the Sir David Attenborough, which is the new boat that's been built here in the UK, just by chance. But that's what they went on a journey all around Antarctica. The map is in the front of this. If you want to see, that's where they went. I think it's a bit closer than where you went, a bit closer into shore. Oh, yeah. They were basically dipping in and doing science all the way around the outside of the continent. And again, being able to doing this with the book, let me just have that license to just take bits of science and bits of exploration, put it all together and make it look wonderful. This was a piece of research that was done a couple of years ago, and they found these incredible nests of these fish called ice fish. So a bit like the eel pout from the Arctic, these ones have antifreeze in their bodies, and they build nests on the seafloor. And recently scientists dropped down camera, and just saw like nest upon nest, like over this huge area. In fact, it's on the screen, but I can't read it. Oh, there we go. 60 million nests over an area of 240 square kilometers. And the pictures are incredible that they brought, but I just love how Romulo has just kind of brought that to life on the page of these crazy fish. And then we've got some lovely scenes of divers under the ice and that kind of thing. So that's, just a lot. I really like how that's all kind of come together visually and scientifically. I'm going to show you quickly one more book for children that I've been working on with another group of illustrators, two women from London, Becky Bolton and Louise Chappell, who go by the name of Good Wives and Warriors. This book, Return of the Wild, came out last year. The thing with their work is it's just so colourful and it really, for me, captures that diversity of life on Earth, the shapes, the colours, the just mad richness of it. It's a simpler book. It hasn't got that sort of involved design elements that some of my others do. It's just it's blocks of text with their pictures really taking centre focus, really. The stories are about species and habitats that have come back from the brink of extinction. So they're positive stories about interventions that have been taken that have been positive, from things like replanting seagrass meadows. And again, I love this sort of underwater, above water image. And this is all stuff, so for these kinds of books, I write the stories, give them some ideas about what's in it, and then just hand it over, and they decide how to make it look. So they made these wonderful scenes. They also created tableaus of kind of composite images, like for this is for the bluefin tuna, and just love the way it looks. So I feel incredibly lucky to be able to make books that people go, oh my gosh, it's such a beautiful book, and it is, and it's really not my skills in terms of creating those images, but I get to bask in that glory. Very quickly, I'm going to tell you about something I'm working on, which is going to come out next year. This is an adult book, and it will be illustrated with colour pictures, and it's a book about art, the art of ocean life. I got the chance to basically look through museum galleries, science museums, and pick out images that I really like, and that I think show interesting sides to sea creatures. It's work in progress. It's going to be out later. So I'll show you just a few images that so far I've picked out. Some of them may be familiar. You may have heard of Ernst Haeckel and his incredible crossover between science and art illustrations that he did at the turn of the century. So he features. I was also looking for images that captured something of the ecological techniques and ecological connections in the ocean. And this one's quite fun, from the middle of the 16th century. I think it's meant to have some kind of allegorical meaning, but I quite like that it's actually stomach content analysis, which is what scientists do, is cut open fish and see what's inside. I found some things I'd never heard about. These are incredible miniature paintings. They're the size of postcards by a Dutch artist called Horace Hofnagel. And some of them are, to me, quite ecological, and they're showing little scenes of species together and sort of behaving and doing things. There's a site, this guy was one of the artists who's put themselves in the ocean, built himself this incredible contraption to climb inside, and did some painting and then did some more when he got back on land and got inspired that way. This is called the Valley of the Sea. It's a little bit dark to be able to see it, but it looks like a sort of landscape painting, but it's actually underwater, which is kind of fun. Found some weird, illustrations, cigarette cards from the 19th century of these large-headed ladies catching fish. And I bring it right up to the present day with some. I'm a big fan of Tracy Williams, if you know her book Adrift, which is about Lego that fell off the back of a ship that crashed off the coast of Cornwall, the Tokyo Express, in the 90s. And now all these ocean-themed Lego are washing up on beaches all over the UK and in other places. And her Instagram feed, her Twitter feed she puts up incredible images of these composites of plastic she's found on beaches, which she insists aren't artworks, but I really think they are. I think they look beautiful, and they really give us a pause for thought as to what's ending up in the ocean. So that book's out next year. It really is a real mix through ancient art through to the modern day, looking at how people have seen sea life and then reflecting myself on how it changes the way I look at it. But that's it from me. Thank you very much. Thanks. Right.
Thank you very much. Please come and sit down. We have a few minutes, I think, until 1:15, which is, I haven't got a watch on, but you can tell me when we hit that time. 15 minutes, right. To have a panel discussion with, I'm going to start with a couple of quick questions, and then we really want to hear from you the questions which you have, and also if there's a way to get questions from those who are joining us online, then we'll bring those in as well. So a couple of basic things, first of all. The map which you showed of the UK, of the world, which had lots of different bits of the world with different iconic species, which represented that different bits of the world, which were about why they were different, essentially, in different parts of the world. When it comes to the UK, how would you define what's so unique and special here compared to the other wonderful things we have in other parts of the world? So if we would have a magic sauce for the ocean in the UK waters, what is it?
That's a good question. Yes, good question. I think we're in a real incredible mixing place in terms of the richness of the seas in this temperate zone that we inhabit. So we've got incredible ecosystems on the shores and subtidally, whether it's seagrass beds or rocky shores or deep coral reefs. There's a whole mixture of things that perhaps we don't think about. I think that's the odd thing about living on an island nation, that we perhaps as a culture don't necessarily identify as a place that is surrounded by sea life, and really diverse sea life, whether that's endemic species that live here and stay here, as well as visiting species like basking sharks and the bluefin tuna that are coming back now that their populations are doing better and things like that. So I think for me, I see the UK in the sort of the northeast Atlantic as being cold and rich and full of nutrients and full of species, but you do have to have, go to a bit of an effort to go and look at. It's easy to just look out at the beach and think there's nothing down there, but there's loads down there. And I see it as being almost a kind of crossroads between stuff that comes and goes seasonally and then the residents. And there's a wonderful mix of the both. Yeah. Any thoughts on that one?
An extension for you to British overseas territories. You've been working in the British Indian overseas territories, which is handed over this week, you may have heard about, in Chagos, and you've had wonderful opportunity to be working there for many years. But the UK has large numbers of, or have a number of different overseas territories all the way around the world. Can you just share a little bit with us about what those territories are, what that represents to the UK and us as UK citizens, about our responsibilities that comes with it? Because it's not just about the waters around the UK, but we do have a very large area of ocean which we are responsible for.
Yes, so we have these UK overseas territories, which some are more familiar, like Falkland Islands and Gibraltar, and others perhaps less so, like the Pitcairn Islands and the Chagos Archipelago. I think there obviously are colonial legacy, but from an ocean point of view, they and the protection of those areas for whether it's Ascension St Helena, whether it's the Chagos Archipelago, or the Pitcairn Islands, has really led us to be a leading ocean nation in terms of ocean protection, and a huge amount of our biodiversity in UK waters is actually in our overseas territories. The Chagos Archipelago is a place I've worked in. I first went out in 2012. It was declared a fully no-take protected area in 2010. And it was really to do that sort of science to understand and sort of have been out pretty much every year ever since. They are politically complex. As soon as you hear the Falklands or Chagos, there's a sort of realise that they are complex. And I think that's where the science becomes the universal currency. We don't get involved in the politics. We look and work collaboratively across across that, and science is a neutral currency that provides the information on what decisions can be made. So whether that's providing those data to the Mauritian government to inform the new marine protected area that they're planning, as there's a handover from the UK, or whether it's, as you said, many databases, I think you mentioned, that are open access. And that's a big shift in science, and an absolutely vital shift in science, and something that the UN Decade of Ocean Science, which is running from 2020, which is running until 2030, is really pushing to actually, rather than it sitting on laptops or hard drives or in drawers or notebooks, is how do we make science not only available but usable, so it can be, we can make the best decisions. And I think what we saw during COVID of how scientists suddenly worked internationally, shared data of the amazing transformation to vaccine development and the speed of which we can do things. We're learning a lot from that kind of thinking and working to say, how can we do this big crisis that we're facing with the climate and the ocean being the beating heart of our climate system, is absolutely critical for us to think less in protective boxes, but more in how can availability of data and decision making and your points on AI and cyber taxonomy, there's obviously huge opportunities to harness that for good.
Thank you. Do you want to share?
No, it's fine. I was going to pass.
Oh, thank you. Right, so questions. I can bring the mic to you. Is that how we're going to roll? Johnny? Question, yes. Oh, we've got a spare mic. Okay, hold on. Hey, get started with that one. I'll get another one.
1, 2. Yeah, maybe I'd better start, otherwise we're going to run out of time. Very brief question. Just last night, Tessa was pointing out the extraordinary achievements that sperm whales do. And on your amazing photography of all those animals living at about 2,500 meters, is that the maximum depth that the sperm whales can get to find their squid dinner?
Thank you. Good question. Depths of whales, sperm whales?
Sperm whales generally hunt in the twilight zone, so that's down to about 1,000 meters. I think, so that's common depth, so let's say about 1,000. I think they can get down to 2,000.
Okay.
I think that the point about the 3D nature of the environment, so we talk a lot about 70% of the planet being ocean, but it's actually 90% of the living space on the planet is ocean. So that three-dimensional side is where technology is really helping us. So some colleagues I work with in the Bertarelli's marine science program have been looking at how sharks and rays and harness data from loads of colleagues globally to look at how they're moving in the space. And that matters if you think about fishing, because different fishing gear, fishes at different depths. So then different species become vulnerable if they're operating at different depths or as they pass up and down through the water columns. And that's these tags that we can put on animals to understand how they move. As that technology develops, we're getting a much better idea of that. And also colleagues at the Marine Biological Association who are seeing these dead zones, these oxygen-free zones we now have, unfortunately, in the ocean, thanks to us. And those are areas that obviously, if a shark's trying to feed in there, they can actually run out of, being able to survive in that zone. So it's really important that we think three-dimensionally about these animals and how they're moving. And there couldn't be a better backdrop for us to have this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. So, I think depth-wise, deepest diving whale is a couple of miles down. Deepest diving octopus, I think, is the Dumbo, 7,000 meters down. Deepest fish, they only go up to 8,500, I think. Alan Jameson found out that fish don't go any deeper than 8,500 meters or so. Any more depth facts, we can pick on that over lunch.
Thank you.
Come to the back first.
Thank you. It's been so interesting. I was just wondering how our commercial fishing is impacting in this day and age. Is it getting better or is it getting worse?
Ooh, the industrial capacity to empty the ocean. Who wants to take that?
I can do. I mean, you add something to. It depends where and when. I think one important thing to bear in mind with fishing is there is such a thing as sustainable fishing, and it is possible to feed millions of people around the world sustainably, and that ecologically sustainably as well as economically. But that a lot of the ways that that's being done at the moment is not sustainable. The types of fishing gear that are causing huge damage to seabed habitats, the deep sea nets of trawls and dredges, the bycatch that happens on long lines. I mean, the scale of long line industrial fishing is terrifying. So it's hard to get a kind of general sense of how things are going globally. There's a lot more awareness about the impacts that different types of fishing are having, and a lot more desire to fish sustainably and to find alternatives. A lot of that's on small scales at the moment. You know, people are looking to farm species in the ocean more sustainably, seaweeds and non-fed species of mollusks and so on, of oysters, mussels, that kind of thing. I think we're on a journey towards understanding what needs to be done and getting that done, but there's still huge challenges. For instance, the foreign selling of licenses for industrial fleets to move into places like West Africa. It's such a big challenge that needs to be solved there. Human atrocities as well as ecological atrocities, whereby these huge industrial boats that have run out of fish in their nearby waters in places like China and Spain are buying licenses to go and take fish for very cheap prices. Something between 4 and 8% of the catch price is what these countries pay for their licenses to catch these fish, so it's tiny. They're not doing anyone any favour apart from the few small number of big corporations who run those fishing companies and taking all the profit, especially from places like the high seas. So I think we've got a long way to go, but I think we are in a place where it's pushing in the right direction. I don't know if you'd agree with that, Heather, or we can just stop there.
I was going to say that's a lot of facts.
Yeah, I'm a bit more gloomy, I'm afraid, in that I think it's, from what I hear, and Heather, you can correct me, well, you both can correct me if I'm wrong, but the single greatest impact we're having to biodiversity in the ocean is coming from illegal, unsustainable, and all forms of fishing, compared by a country mile compared to anything else. We talk about plastics a lot, we talk about the oxygenated zones, other chemicals going into the ocean, development and the impact that has, on and on it goes. But the single most damaging, destructive impact we're having to the life in the ocean that makes all life possible is fishing. Not to say that sustainable fishing is not possible. It needs to be. There are billions of people whose primary source of protein is fishing. So it's not an either or. It's how we manage that tension between the two. Right, a couple more minutes. 2 minutes. Right.
What do you think about subsea mining, and especially that a lot of green tech will depend on the minerals that really will have to, well, probably will have to come from that mining? What?
Good question. You're going to get it in the neck.
Listen to our podcast episode where we spoke to a guy who's running one of the companies that is pushing that very fast. I think I should hand it to Heather, actually. I wrote a book about the deep sea, and it was a lot of it was about deep sea mining and those questions. It's a false narrative saying that we have to go to the deep ocean to get these metals for a green technology transition. There's a lot more. When I set out to write a book about six years ago or so about deep sea mining and this issue, and people said to me, no one's going to want to hear about this. It's becoming bigger and bigger. If you don't know anything about deep sea mining and you've got 20 minutes to spare and you want to have a good laugh about it, because it's frankly terrifying, but you want to see the facts as well, check out John Oliver's This Week Tonight. He's an American comedian. You find it on YouTube. He does 20 minutes. He gets the top scientists who know their stuff talking about why this is a bad problem. He also makes you laugh about how stupid the whole thing is, which frankly we need comedians to lighten things up for us. But it is the corporations who want to make a profit from this who are spinning this narrative about needing these metals. There are other ways. There's nothing to be said that the metals in the deep sea are the ones that will be building electric cars. Things change very quickly in these industries. I'm going to pass to you.
Yeah, I did say I was a shallow scientist, so I'm not the expertise here, but just to pick up on the really nice, clear guidance that Lisa gave at the end of her talk, just have a think about what might be in your drawers of cables and electronic gadgetry. Electronic waste is a massive, massive challenge, and so actually mining that for the minerals is where we should be starting, and thinking about what we buy, what we use. Do you need to upgrade your phone every time you get an offer? all of that things, how we think about how we use these scarce minerals in our day-to-day lives. So that's where I would turn around to what we can do every day that doesn't give this case that's being pushed out there for deep sea mining, which is where most of the carbon in the ocean is stored, where most of the biodiversity is undiscovered, and where the damage we could do would be absolutely irreversible, and we shouldn't even be thinking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And do have a listen to Catch Our Drift podcast on it as well, and you'll hear it from the horses' mouths about why it's good, more details about all of that. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. And one final thing, that recent science has come out about these polymetallic metallic nodules that have been identified to be producing oxygen. A source of oxygen are these rocks. They're basically batteries in the ocean. You put a current through them, they start producing oxygen. And that could be one of the, outside of photosynthesis, in terms of oxygen production, that's the only other known way oxygen is created, is it? Yeah. Certainly in the deep sea? Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. Pointing at the shallow scientists.
It's mad. No one never expected that.
Transformative. And yeah, there's some questions which have been asked by a company called the Metals Company about this, the quality of this science, which is they're trying to undermine it, but, excuse the pun, but as you will hear on the podcast with Helen and myself, when we interviewed the CEO, we took him to task on quite a lot of things. He is, like others have done in the past, trying to discredit the science which is out there that will undermine his business case, which there isn't a business case for anyway. Anyway, without further ado, we have now reached lunchtime. So thank you all very much for your attention this morning. We look forward to sharing further stories with you, where we're going to hear from some artists, I think, this afternoon. But now we're having a break for lunch, and we'll find out whether we're eating fish or not. Back here for 2 o'clock. Thank you. Are we having fish? We got fish lunch?